He's added quite a bit. I'd say he's added quite a bit. Last year, we tried to set a foundation down, but he's added quite a bit. He's going back to where he was about the second year in Arizona now. That there's quite a bit more on the safeties, and there's quite a bit more in the whole defense.
When you talk about different looks that he can put in defensively, like a big nickel or a dime or the different blitz packages, I would think the safeties are probably where the creativity is the most. Does that sound right in terms of being able to use them lots of different ways?
Creativity is one thing. The biggest thing in this scheme is they have to be extremely cerebral because they have all the checks.
Right.
Whether the running back is in a behind the center, behind the tackle. So they have all the checks. That's where the complexity comes in, is you have to be able to make the checks.
And with a room full of really young guys for the most part, have they handled that well as much as you'd expect?
We're making glacial progress. There is a lot on their plate, but there's a lot on everybody's plate in Todd's defense. That's the beauty of it. It's a defense for everybody, because what Todd does is he'll highlight what you can do best. He won't ask what you can't do. And each safety has a different skill set, so it's really good defense for a safety. It really is, once you learn it.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is going to be Ira Kaufman.
Nick, you always hear about the jump between season 1 and season 2 for these, young players. Nick, for Mike Edwards, Nick in particular, what have you noticed about the jump from year 1 to year 2?
There's maturation there. Mike's gotten more cerebral. Mike understands the defense. The second part of that, Ira, is in this league, you get and become a good player when you truly understand what the offense is trying to do to the defense. And that's the jump that these kids have to make, is once you master what you're doing, you have to really have an understanding of what the offense is trying to do to you. That's the jump that we need to make.
And Nick, Bruce said that Edwards is kind of a ball hawk. He's good at getting his hands on balls. Is that his forte, the way you look at him at this point?
Yes, it is. That's a very good point. In zone coverages and in man coverages, that's what he does best. Mike's actually a better down player than high player because he sees the ball in a closed area. But Mike has good zone skills. So you're right there, and BA's right in his assessment.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is going to be Luke Easterling.
Coach, Bruce mentioned to us just a little bit ago that safety is one of those spots where the decisions at the bottom of the roster are going to be the toughest in terms of, the depth and what these guys can do on special teams. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on those guys that are fighting for those last couple of spots and what you've seen from the guys who are battling it out for maybe that last spot.
Well, when you set up a program and you say your third and fourth safeties have to contribute on special teams, and even your 1 and 2 have to do something. So when you look at the fourth spot, you say to yourself, which guy can contribute better on special teams? It's different. If I sit in my room, I'm looking at which guy, that fourth guy has to be able to play both strong and free. But the way, if you look at it from a GM and a head coach, that fourth guy has to be a core guy on your special teams. So that position really comes down to Coach Armstrong and BA right there, who, because I believe will carry 4. Arizona, sometimes we carried 5, but that's because Ty was the nickel also. So right now with Bunning be the 1 nickel, I think we'll get 4 safeties.
In that situation, is there ever a conversation where you kind of try to stand on the table for a certain guy or say,
Well,
at least
yes,
have
yes.
that debate?
Yes. There's always that conversation because my obligation is to the safeties. And when we do talk personnel, what I have to give the head coach and the general manager is my assessment of the safeties. And then Coach Armstrong will come right in and he'll give us assessment of the safeties according to his needs. So, you blend them both together. At the end of the day, the general manager and the head coach makes that call. But yes, I definitely get on the table and say, I need this young man, I need this young man, and these are the reasons why we need them.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Next up is going to be John Ledyard.
Coach, you mentioned how safeties have different skill sets, and you mentioned Mike Edwards being maybe a better down player than high player. Is there a guy when you look at this safety room that you think is kind of the optimal free safety for when you guys go to single high looks that you'd like to see playing in that high spot?
Well, I mean, Mike and Winfield are both your single high guys. Jordan's skill set is play down low. He's a thumper. He loves contact. He'll take blockers on. So Jordan's skill set is definitely down. Mike can play both. Winfield can play both. So, in our scheme, the difference in our scheme is we play so much man that, and you mentioned these names. These kids are not these kids, but you mentioned Tyrann Mathieu and Buda Baker. The reason we drafted them and Tony Jefferson out in Arizona, all those kids are under 5'10", but they can all play man. And in our scheme, you have to be able to have some type of man skills. The 6'2", 215-pound safety doesn't fit into our scheme unless he'd be able to play some man coverage. We just go for a quicker safety because of what Todd asked them to do.
You mentioned man coverage there, and we've talked with a couple of different coaches actually now and asked about that backup nickel spot. If something were to happen, God forbid, to Sean, that who would step into that backup nickel spot or into that starting nickel spot. And Bruce mentioned maybe Mike Edwards or Antoine Winfield being two of the candidates. Do you see one kind of ahead of the other maybe at this point in time in terms of the man coverage skill set and what it would take to play in the slot?
No, they're both about the same. What we've had to do is we've had to double teach Mike and Winfield the nickel position. And Winfield's gotten much more of it than Mike has gotten. And, to Winfield's credit, he's really done a good job when I'm not making any excuses, but the young man did not have the 2 months in the spring to help him. So he's had to learn two positions on the fly here, and he's done a nice job with it.
All right, our next question is going to come from Steve Isbitz.
Coach, just sticking with Winfield there, does he play and act like a rookie to you? You've been around a lot of them.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Because if you walk in his shoes, there's nothing that's too big for the young man. I mean, he was raised under the bright lights. And I have never met his father and mother, but they have done a fabulous job. This is a well-grounded young man that understands what the NFL is all about. I mean, his dad played 14 years. So he's just a heck of a kid. And the biggest thing is he's so grounded. He takes copious notes in the meeting room. He always wants to learn. You only have to tell him once, and the second time he'll correct. And he's extremely coachable. So, he's way more mature than most rookies would be, believe me.
And Coach, just looking back for a minute, how do you explain the secondary's huge turnaround last season, late in the year? What was the catalyst there?
Maturation, just maturation. It was a little too fast for him, and we were it was all new. Now those aren't excuses in the NFL, but you asked me the question. The biggest reason would be the maturation, and that's what we're counting on this year. Hopefully, we're a year older, we're a year smarter, and when you get a year smarter, then you you're able to see, as I alluded about 5 minutes ago, you have to understand what the offense is trying to do to you. And once you understand what the offense is trying to do to you, and if you know what you're doing, then the game becomes slower for you out there game day. So the biggest thing would be the maturation.
We have time for just a few more. We're going to go with Taylor Jenkins, followed by Ira Kaufman.
Hey, Coach. Going back to Ira's question a little bit, Bruce praised Mike Edwards' ability to play and be a ball hawk, but he also said he had some struggles in tackling, which is interesting looking at how physical he was at Kentucky and how many tackles he had there. Can you speak a little bit to that disconnect maybe coming to this level and how he's grown in that fashion the last 2 years and how he can improve on that part of his game?
Well, one of the reasons we drafted him, I think I may be off by a tackle or two, but I think he had 413 tackles in college. And I don't care where you play. If you have 413, that's quite a bit. But this league's a little different. Everybody's pretty good on offense. And Mike did have some hiccups last year in his tackling. So we've addressed it. I, for one, am sad we didn't have 3 preseason games, because that's, we're able to see Mike get in there and do some tackling. But all these young men, they all, when you start out as a rookie, all have some dents in their armor, and a pro addresses the dent in his armor and attempts to get better, or else, this league's so competitive. So, Mike had some hiccups. He knows it. We know it. We've attempted to address it, and we'll have to see how it goes. Unfortunately, we don't have any sparring to do, so we'll have to wait until the season starts.
We have time for one more. We're going to go with Ira Kaufman.
Nick, I know how to get your attention, and that's by saying that in 11 days, Drew Brees and company will be preparing to puncture some holes in your secondary, Nick. But talk about your respect for the Saints offense, what Peyton and Brees do, and what were your 2 takeaways from the Saints games last year, Nick?
Well, I love your adjectives or adverbs. Puncture, that hurts me right there, Ira. That hurts me. But
I'm a Brooklyn man, Nick. You know.
Yeah, the truth is the truth. Nah, he's as good as quarterback there is in the league. And when you say New Orleans, to me, the first thing I think of is they're such a smart offense. They're such a smart offense. They're going to attack you where they think the weakness of your defense is. And they do so much redirection with these jet motions. And they have 2 key players in 13 and 41. And then you add Drew in there. I mean, he's just like what we're going against right now with Tom. You have to stay in your coverage longer. Tom's going to find the receiver. And like all great quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Tom, Drew, they put the ball where you can't get it. They have just such a touch on them that they put it where you can't get it. But I have nothing but great respect for New Orleans offense. They are intelligent. They don't make mistakes, and they put the pressure on you.
That's all for today. Thanks for taking the time, Coach.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome.